preparing to go live. We are indeed live on YouTube, trying again to go live to our family. Welcome, welcome again, Dr. Clyde. Thank you so much for bearing with us through the technical challenges that we had. Family, if you joined us a short while ago, you will know that we had some hiccups with the internet, but we're actually trying to go live again and get this show on the road. Dr. Clyde Winters, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine. And how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. And I'm just hoping that we'll be able to get the opportunity to deliver our presentation and have a conversation on this platform today, because wow, last week when you carried on the show for me when I got cut off, you were talking about the Asian African writing systems that go back thousands of years. And this is so important because, we're told over and over again that we don't have, that we didn't have any writing systems, but you found some writing systems that we did have, and the connections that go across continents. And I'm going to be talking about some of those today as well. But I wonder if you could just remind us about the Thinite inscriptions, the Minoan script, and and the various other scripts that you were talking about last week, please.
Okay, well, basically the writing that they used. I don't know if you can see me or not. The
Yes.
writing system is a system in a sense that included wedges, circles, maybe double circles, double wedges. And what they did in a sense is that they used these geometric signs to discuss their history, discuss their culture. They taught about some of their ancient kings. They taught about some of their early rulers. So it's a very dynamic script. What I did is that years ago I was doing the research after I wrote my master's thesis. My master's thesis was called From Zan to Zan. And so
Mm.
after I wrote my master's thesis, I began in a sense, it was basically discussing the Swahili civilizations in Swahili. But then I started seeing that I started reading where Ivan van Sertima and others have said that the Olmecs had used had their own writing system,
Mm-hmm.
and so then when I started to really research it, I found out that the Olmecs were really Mandingo speakers. They were
Mm-hmm.
Mandingo speakers. They didn't speak an American Indian language. They spoke the Mandingo language. In fact, the Mandingos played an important role in the early civilizations of the world, you know, and because it seems as though during the 10,000 years ago, you know, the Mandingo language may have been in a sense an inner language, a language that was used by various peoples. But what it is that the European, what he's done is that because of the fact that he's tried to separate black people and say that Africans are different from people in the Pacific Islands and Pacific Islanders, in the eastern in Melanesia are different from people in Australia. And so what happens is that he wants us not to really, in a sense, bring all these people together. And I think that's the beauty of your book. Your book, in a sense, it shows the relationship between these people. It shows, in a sense, how all these people shared a common culture. And in fact, they even have common vocabulary items. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's very important in a sense that we look at black people as in a sense not such a disjointed group. They're much more unified than people would believe. But the thing is, this is that the European they want us to believe that each black civilization is different, and say that black people from Africa, black people from the Americas, we had no history. We didn't have any history. Black people in the Caribbean, Africa, we had no history. Africans, maybe they had a little history, but that's a lie. We do have history, and our history is very strong. But what makes it very difficult is that family is that when you study groups like the so-called Maya Indians, the Maya Indians, they didn't even call themselves Maya, but that was just some term that people made up. They each tribe had its own name. And the thing is, this is that because of the fact that you be trying to look up these various people under terms like Maya or Zanji, what happens in a sense is that you lose, any type of understanding of these people because often they're not under those terms. And it's very important in a sense to understand is that you want to make people more aware and open and understanding about what's going on in the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what was fantastic about the presentation that you did last week and what I'm going to be hopefully continuing to do today is that, we're going to be giving recognition to the early writing systems of us as Africans, as you're saying, because it's so important, that we acknowledge the fact that we had this global writing systems and your presentation showed how it spread across continents. And today's presentation is also going to be highlighting the fact that, this incredible writing system that our ancient ancestors have developed spread across continents. And that's what that showed us, is that we took our ancient traditions with us, wherever we went as a people. And as you said, that we were certainly far more connected than, the white literary world would want to have us believe. And the evidence is clear. We are one people. We have been traveling. We have been taking our knowledge and our systems with us across the globe. And the early writing systems that we have as a people is just incredible. So I'm just going to let a few people know that we are live back again. We're back on again, and we're trying to have our audience have the opportunity to join us. And we apologize for the earlier false start, but hopefully this time we're not going to have the challenges that we were having earlier and that we had last strong as well. Dr. Clyde, before we go into the presentations, you've written over 50 books. You are incredible when it comes to research, when it comes to writing books, when it comes to writing articles. I wonder if you want to just say something about one or two of the books that you've written, and maybe in particular, the ones that can talk about, how you manage to decipher, the scripts. I mean, you just don't get the credit that you deserve. You've managed to decipher some of the ancient Mandi scripts. And we're going to be looking at symbolism, as I've said today. And together, we're going to be trying to decode some of the symbols. But, a lot of that work's already been done for me. But, Dr. Clyde, he was an originary. And go ahead, Dr. Clyde.
I think that one of the books that this book right here, as you can see, is called The Dawn of Writing, Decipherment of the Thinite, and this Paleo tablet and the Gobekli Tepe pillars. And see, in this book, what I do is that this is where I decipher the various inscriptions that go back over 10,000 years. And see, what people don't understand is that most people only believe in a sense that that they act as though the only people in the world that wanted to travel around the world and discover new lands and new peoples was the white men. No, Black people were adventurous too. Black people wanted to find out what was over there, and so what you find is because of the fact that they've hidden from us this whole idea that we were adventurers too. We wanted that adventure. We wanted to discover new things. And then because we wanted to discover new things, we expanded. And we went out and we expanded across the world. But what happened is that there was a lot of unity within this. And there was a particular clan called the Kunta. The Kunta clan, and the Kunta, in a sense, they formed the royalty. Not only in many parts of Africa, West Africa, but also China and Elam. The Kunta clan was very strong, was very powerful. And the Kunta people, in a sense, what they did is that they left in a sense, a very interesting history. And see, this is what is so important to understand is that we're only touching the surface. But that's why you need to buy Hidden in the Shadows and understand, in a sense, the important role that Black people have played in Europe, in Europe, you know, because see, the thing is this is that Europe is not just a continent. Today it's a continent of white folks, but it wasn't like that all the time. What happened is that Black people had so many wars, the 30-year war, the 100-year war. And what they did is that they were Black at first. But as they began, in a sense, to recruit mercenaries from the Caucasus Mountains, they became lighter and lighter and lighter. And you know, Black men, we always had this fascination with white thighs, white women, that we brought in these white women, and then our children became all mixed up. And so then that's how they were able, in a sense, to take over the land. And they took over the land because we allowed all these mercenaries and immigrants to come into the country, to take over the country, and begin, in a sense, to start a whole new line, whole new train of thought. But what we have to do is we had to, in a sense, stop this. Even today, you find I was doing a talk once, and some brothers from London said, "Leave us alone. We want our white women because they give us money. Get a job. Get a job. Get a job." But so many men are ready to let women take care of them. It's really sad. You know, it's really sad that you know, I could have been a gigolo. When I was young, I was a little bit more handsome. I could have been a gigolo, but my father always taught me, you want to take care of your family. The Black woman is the epitome of beauty, the epitome. She's the standard of beauty, the standard of elegance, the standard of grace. And so then, no, I wasn't going to do that to my women, you know, and I didn't want to mess with those white girls. But the thing is this, is that we have to, in a sense, understand that our history is there, and our history, although it's hidden in the shadows, we had to bring it into the light.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Clyde Winters, for all of your works, for your dedication, your commitment to bringing the knowledge of our history to us, for your support on this channel, for your support of me and my works. I thank you so much. I mean, you've done incredible works. You really have. So we're going to jump into the presentation. I think we should try and do that fairly quickly while we've actually got the opportunity of a fairly decent and stable internet. We've had all these challenges throughout, you know, the last couple of weeks and even earlier today. And to those of you who joined me earlier, I certainly hope that you will do, that you come back and, you know, still be part of the show today. Don't give up on us. Don't give up on me anyway, for the challenge, because of the challenges that we've been having. So, you know, we're going to continue talking about the writing systems that our ancestors actually created, okay? And let's set this up fairly quickly, hopefully. Hopefully the computer will allow me to do so today. And thanks again, Dr. Clyde, for the presentation that you did for us last strong. Some say weak, some say strong. Thank you so much. It was phenomenal. It really kind of laid the foundation for what we're going to be talking about today. Who do we have in the house? We've got the Cass in the house, who's blessed us with $5. Thank you so much. That's very generous of you. Thank you so much. And Ryan Hunt Turner has said, yes, the Black woman is everything. Thank you so much. You know, if you watched the presentation that I did a few strongs ago, you will know that the Black woman at one time was actually the goddess for thousands of years, for tens of thousands of years, possibly hundreds of thousands of years. The Black woman was regarded as the goddess. She was, you know, held on a pedestal. So I'm just looking over to see if the presentation has come up on YouTube. It ought to be there. And it looks as though it's coming through. The cast, thank you so much for your generous gift there. It says, God bless you, Dr. Winters. I will make sure Dr. Winters gets your gift. Let's give that a like. Thank you. And while you're in, family, please do give us a like and let the family know that we are back. And once again, thanks so much to Dr. Clive for the works that he's been doing and for the presentation that he did last strong as well. If you missed it, it's entitled The Origins of Writing, and he was exposing for us Africa's hidden intellectual legacy, because as he was saying, you know, it's a great myth to suggest that our ancient civilizations didn't have a writing system. In fact, we had very sophisticated writing and literary systems, more sophisticated than we have today, because not only did we have letters, we had pictures as well, and we had symbols and we had signs, and they had deep meaning. So take a sip of my water there. And we're going to continue what Dr. Clive Winters started last strong when he was explaining about the early African scripts that he said goes back over 20,000 years. And remember, what may appear to some as just lines and circles, if you don't understand the meaning of those lines and circles, then you are going to be excluded from the knowledge that our ancestors were actually communicating with us. What do I mean? Let's press on with today's presentation, and so that we can get into that conversation. So today I'm continuing to walk in the footsteps that Dr. Clive started last strong, and we're going to be decoding some of Asian African symbols. And mine actually goes back at least 5,000 years. But as we've already heard, you know, our writing system actually goes back well over 20,000 years. And if you don't know, then the situation is that a lot of our written text could be hidden in plain sight. So we are today on episode 20. This is the final episode in the series, Hidden in Plain Sight. And if you've been with us over this course and over this series, you would have traveled continents with us. You would have traveled through thousands of years of our history. Yeah, while we've been following the footprints of our ancestors from Africa to Asia, to the Middle East, to Europe, to the Americas, we've been examining ancient monuments, pyramids, temples, rock-hewn sanctuaries. We've been looking at sacred art, burial sites, and today we're going to be homing in on writing systems and symbols that we started last strong. We've also been looking at genetic evidence, languages. Oh my gosh, we've stood at the foot of colossal statues like the Olmec heads in America, you know, and we've explored these ancient civilizations from Kemet Kush to Persia to Mesopotamia. You know, we've been journeying through Hindu Kush, you know, the Bamiyan Valley. Do you remember the Ajanta caves? Do you remember the Angkor Wat pyramids and those monuments and all of the pyramids that they've got in Sudan? And, you know, you cannot have been with us over the last 19 episodes and still be with us today and not now know that everywhere you look, on every continent around the world, there is evidence of an ancient African presence. There's evidence of a pre-colonial African presence. There's evidence of a pre-colonial African influence. There's evidence of a pre-colonial African civilization. And the cumulative weight of all of this evidence that we've been revealing, you know, that wasn't taught to us in school, college, or university, shows us and is proof to us beyond a doubt that pre-colonial times, the world was black and it was a very different civilization. It was a civilization that was headed up by us as Africans. We were the royals, we were the lords, we were the gods, we were the goddesses, the angels. All of the stories pre-colonialism revolved around us as Africans. We were the carriers of knowledge, and we carried that knowledge to all the continents around the world. And we, in fact, shaped the pre-colonial world. And one of the biggest lies that has been told to us is that we didn't have a history and that we didn't have any place in history, only to uncover that prior to the whitewashing and the pre-colonial takeover, there was indeed an African world that we shaped. And so we're just going to be looking today at the writing system that existed in that pre-colonial world, but that belonged to us as Africans. Because, you know, we're going to be dispelling the myth that Africa was also a backward land. And that's what we've been doing throughout the series. We've been dispelling the myth that Africans didn't have a civilized world, that Africans didn't have any literature. We're dispelling the myth that Africans had no written history, and the myth that civilization, learning, and all the intellectual achievements, etc., came from elsewhere other than Africa. That is the biggest lie from the pit of hell. For generations, you know, for generations since our enslavement, they've been pushing this narrative to suggest that we didn't have a history. But on this series, you know, we've been examining their evidence, and the evidence speaks for itself. And so, you know, we haven't been looking at the world through, you know, the Eurocentric lens, which is what quite often they would have us to do. We've been looking at the archaeological evidence for ourselves. We've been looking at the monuments, the features on the monuments, the temples, the works of our scholars, our philosophers. And, you know, we've been telling our own story of our ancient societies pre-colonialism. And now we're going to be telling the story about our ancient writing systems and how sophisticated they were, and how they recorded history and preserved knowledge. And you're going to find as well that our forefathers produced literary works thousands of years before many other parts of the world had even entered the record at all. So over 4,000, 5,000 years of African scribes that we're going to be focusing on today. The pyramid text is among them. You know, our ancient authors were even producing great, you know, literary works such as The Tale of the Shipwrecked Sailor. And this literary masterpiece I discovered that was written over 2,000 years ago, widely regarded as the world's earliest surviving fantasy narrative. Would you believe it? That it was our 2,000-year-old literary masterpiece that actually influenced major voyage stories such as Sinbad the Sailor, and even echoes within Homer's Odyssey. Yes, you know, it was our African storytellers that influenced all of those voyage stories. So across Africa, from Kemet to Ethiopia, from the Horn of Africa to West Africa, ancient manuscripts, inscriptions, papyrus, and written traditions actually reveal a continent rich in literacy, rich in scholarship and intellectual achievements. The evidence is overwhelming, family. Our ancestors were not merely builders of monuments, as great as they were when it came to building monuments. And they were not only great when it comes to their building ideas, but they were great in terms of recording their history and preserving knowledge of their histories as well. They told their stories, and we're going to be uncovering the evidence of that forgotten literary world in today's presentation. So here we have on the screen just, something that we're all, I think, more familiar with, and that is the sacred Egyptian text, which is thousands of years old. And although, sorry, I've made a mistake there of calling it the Egyptian text, it's actually the Kemetian text, because they changed the name, didn't they, from Kemet to Egypt, because what happens when they change the name is that they can claim the history as well. But great civilizations like the ones, like the Kemetian civilization, it doesn't emerge without knowledge. And we're not able to build the huge monuments that we built without mathematics. And we wouldn't have been able to navigate the oceans as we did unless we had an understanding of astronomy. Yeah, and we wouldn't have been able to preserve our culture across the millennium world without systems of recording and transmitting information. So all of that did actually exist. And we're going to be exploring the minds of our ancestors today as we decode some of these ancient symbols, okay? Because not only did our ancestors leave us monuments from the civilized world that they actually built, they left us something even more powerful. They left us the language of symbols. And that language of those symbols still speaks to us today across thousands of years. And it's our job to actually study those symbols, to understand what our ancestors were saying through those symbols. And if we can understand that, then we'll be able to hear from our ancestors today. So today is a bit of an introduction to the signs, symbols, and the sacred knowledge of our ancestors. From Kush to Malta, from the Congo to Britain, the symbols remain and are waiting for us to remember how to read them. So let's do the job of trying to remember how to read their symbols, because every one of those symbols tells a story. Every symbol, every writing on those monuments is preserving and documenting our ancient history. Long before modern alphabet, our African societies used a very complex system of symbols and pictures to communicate powerful, deeply thoughtful ideas. And we have got to learn that language so that our ancestors can speak to us today. Okay, family? But before we do, just to remind you again, to please support the works. This is my latest book, Hidden in the Shadows of Ancient Britain, An Erased African History Restored. Get that book. It will give you over 40,000 years of ancient African history in Britain that they tried to bury, but they didn't know when they were burying our ancestors and the knowledge of the civilizations that our ancestors brought to Britain, that they were burying seeds, and one day those seeds would start sprouting and springing up all over the place. And that's what's happening now. The seeds are springing up, and we are communicating to you through books and through social media the works of our ancestors. So welcome, Black people, Israelites. Good to have you in the house. Brother Kwame Ossi, great to have you in the house. You're going to love today's session because we're going to be looking at the Ashanti Kingdom symbols as well. Rise Up Ryan Turner in the house. Great to have you in the house. Sister Betty is in the house. Sister Akua is in the house. And hopefully some of those who were with us earlier will join us again. So not only do I want you to support my works, family, but please do support the works of Dr. Clyde Winters as well. Welcome back again, Dr. Clyde. Dr. Clyde's got his own YouTube channel. Please do sign up and subscribe to his YouTube channel. He's always bringing evidence of our history. As I said earlier, he's an author of over 50 books and you know, you can read from now to the next 10 years or so, the books that he's written over the last 50 years. So please do support the works of Dr. Winters as well. You know, obviously we can't make a living from selling our books, but what we can do is get the encouragement from you, our wonderful supporters. You know, should you buy our books, it makes it feel as though the works that we're doing is worthwhile. Please, we don't have to wait, you know, for Mr. You know, Caucasian to tell us that the works are good before we support it. Please do support the works, okay? Make the gift of knowledge the gift that you present to a family member for their Earth Day or for whatever occasion is coming up. Okay, so we're going to be decoding the ancient African symbols today. We're going to be blowing a big hole into this myth that claims that Africans had no literature. They're going to have to eat their words after today's session. All those so-called, you know, European scholars that said that Africans didn't have any written history, that it's a myth that Africans, you know, had any civilization prior to their encounter with the Caucasians. They're going to have to eat their words today, and all of their works are just not going to be able to stand up, because you're going to see today that we had produced pre-colonial times very sophisticated systems of writing and intellectual thought. Okay, so let's uncover that today in today's session, and we're going to look at how we were actually able, or our ancestors preserved ancestral wisdom through those symbols, and that the symbols that they used was a powerful coded language. Okay, and we need to learn to decode, you know, the ancient writing systems so that, you know, we can communicate with our ancestors today. So let's go delving into today's message, which is all about encoding our ancient African symbols. Take a little listen to this.
Nobody looks at the back of this statue, but that's where Ramesses tells you who he really is. This vertical slab is not just support, it is a back pillar, and it carries his full royal identity. At the very top, you see his Horus name, Karnacht Meri Mart, the strong bull, beloved of Mart. This presents him as powerful and aligned with Mart, the divine order of the universe. Below that comes his throne name as King of Upper and Lower Egypt. The B symbol of Lower Egypt, pronounced BT, and the Sedge symbolism of Upper Egypt, pronounced Nesut. User Mart Ra, Setep En Ra. The justice of Ra is powerful, chosen of Ra. This is a declaration. His rule is backed by the sun god himself. And finally, his birth name, Ra-Mez-Su, Mary Amun. Ra is the one who bore him, beloved of Amun. This is the name we know today, Ramesses. So this is not decoration, it is a message in stone. Power, divine order, a king created by the gods. Even from the back, this statue is still speaking.
There we are, family. You know, our ancestors, they actually carved messages into stone for us long before, you know, we were writing books or our ancestors were writing books. We were carving messages into stone. We were painting symbols on cave walls. We were engraving sacred signs on temples, on monuments, jewelry, textiles, weapons, and tombs. And none of the signs were random. Every symbol carried meaning. Every mark told a story. Every image, you know, that they painted was part of a language through which our ancestors were interpreting the world. And you just heard there, you know, the meaning of these symbols here. And obviously these so-called Egyptologists have gone to great lengths to be able to try and read and understand the language of our ancestors and what they were saying. And you heard there that every picture, every line had a meaning, and it was the meaning, and they were able to interpret the meaning, and in so doing, you know, give us an insight into the world of our ancestors. And so it's important for us to try and decode the symbols of our ancestors, because in so doing, you know, we're beginning to understand the mysteries, the cycles, the spiritual forces, and we're able to understand humanity itself and our place within the universe as our ancestors understood it. So yeah, we're on episode 20 of this journey, and it's a fascinating world, looking into the world of our ancient African ancestors, and it's going to continue with the symbolism and the writing system today. So I want to encourage everybody to, you know, think deeply about the symbols that our ancestors actually created thousands of years ago, because they coded wisdom into those symbols. They coded that wisdom for future generations as well, so that, you know, we could get to understand ourselves. And when we look at our ancient symbols now, we've got to see them as far more than decoration. We've got to see them as, you know, vessels that is communicating history to us, vessels that's communicating, that wants us to remember our history, that wants us to remember our identity, to remember the authority that our ancestors had, to see the spiritual side as well through those symbols and the civilization itself that those symbols actually spoke of. So let's start taking a look at some of those symbols here. And as I've said here, by utilizing the power of our African symbology, it helps us to understand the mind of our ancestors. So I want to rise up again, Dr. Clyde Winters, who started this session last strong, identifying some of the symbols and the lenses through which our ancestors actually saw the world, and how we documented how we saw the world through symbols. And we're going to be homing in on some of these symbols, and we're going to be trying to use an African analytical lens as well to see and hear from our ancestors, because they've left some powerful messages behind, and we will see that they were deeply, deeply intellectual, deeply spiritual, spiritually grounded. And, you know, they built a scientific world in terms of symbols. And as we said, it transcended time, continents, you know, and it interconnected us. That Dr. Clyde was saying earlier, it kept us interconnected as a people, because, you know, we were able to communicate with each other across all of these continents through the symbols, as well as obviously the languages as that changed. And so our ancestors, in terms of the way that they saw the world, in terms of the way that they saw us as humans as well, they had an interconnection between us as humans, nature, and the cosmos. And you're going to see through some of those symbols that, you know, they looked at the world through those different perspectives. Okay, so get ready for that as well. It wasn't just a straight line. We saw life, our ancestors saw life as a cycle of birth, growth, death, renewal. And that cycle of birth, growth, death, and renewal was actually governed by the natural and cosmic laws. And that's all reflected in their spiritual belief systems as well. And you're going to see, you know, that belief system, you know, carved into their symbols, woven into cloth. It's going to be embedded in architecture, you know, you're going to see how we were encoding that knowledge. So let's jump over to the next slide here. Now, this is going to already, it should be starting to look familiar, some of those symbols, but we're looking at it slightly differently here, because across the ancient world, long before language became widespread, our ancient ancestors, they developed a system for recording knowledge through symbols. And the ones that we're looking at here, these symbols were not random decoration. Yeah, they all had meaning. You know, some of you watching the video right now, you know, are probably familiar with the meaning of some of these symbols. And they use these symbols and the meaning behind these symbols to explain the universe, to explain time, to explain life, to explain death, humanity's relationship with the unseen world. And, you know, even when we begin to study the ancient stones and the monuments and the carvings, you're going to see, you know, some of these symbols have been carved into those monuments. And so, you know, if we understand what some of these symbols actually mean, when we see them on the stones, then, you know, we can understand the message that our early ancestors were actually communicating to us thousands of years ago, okay? Some of these symbols, you know, they speak of, you know, we've got symbols of crosses, we've got symbols of circles, we've got spirals, we've got solar forms. You know, they were talking about, you know, our civilization through the cosmology, through the radiating sun, these concentric circles, all had meaning. And we're going to be dipping into that today. And, you know, a lot of these, some of you will recognize as the Adinkra symbols. And some time ago, Brother Kwame Osei in the chat said, Sister Shanice, you've got to delve into, you know, the Adinkra symbols and the Ashanti symbols. And here we are today. Because, you know, in African traditions, like the Adinkra symbol, like the Congo, the Kenge cosmogram, you know, they were talking about life force, the cycle of life, balance, transformation, the connection between the physical world and the spiritual world. All these symbols, you know, they all had deep meaning. And we've got to, I'm just going to be touching the surface today, but today's session is to help us to begin to recognize African symbology, to give African symbology the credit that it deserves. And, you know, so that we begin to see the works of our ancient ancestors for, you know, and give it the credit that it deserves. Because unless, you know, we're the ones who are actually viewing and sharing the cosmological knowledge of our ancestors and their works, it's going to get hidden from us. We're not going to recognize it. So let's apply an African-centered framework around the identity of these designs. Let's begin to be aware of what the intention of some of these designs and symbols were all about, from an astronomical, from a spiritual, from a philosophical perspective, because this is a language in itself. And it's important for us to recognize the symbolism, because it's powerful. It's a powerful ancient language, and art was used to help to unpack the meaning of the world. And so here we have our ancient societies that use symbols intentionally to communicate knowledge, belief, identity, and social order long before records were actually written. And these ancient symbols carried so much meaning. it was like a language in its own right, you know. And wow, to think that I just want to move forward pretty quickly because I want to get into some of these symbols, and I want you to, catch why I got so excited when I started recognizing and understanding some of these symbols and what they were actually communicating to us. And our ancestors were brilliant artists as well. And these symbols often formed like a bridge between the physical world and the spiritual world, the visible and the invisible. And so our ancestors were so spiritual and were almost on another plane and another dimension in terms of their thoughts, that in a lot of their symbols, not only were they talking about what we could see visibly, but they were also talking about what they could see of the invisible world as well, and shapes and colors and animals and celestial bodies and geometric patterns. They all carried layered meanings, and it's important that we remember that our ancestors carried communicated layered meanings through their shapes, patterns, and colors. And they were talking about life, they were talking about death, nature, and the universe. Yeah. And a single symbol could represent divine power, it could represent royalty, it could represent scientific knowledge. It depended on the context and the placement. And this is why our history is so complex. Yeah. And so remember, all of this was developed over thousands of years. We had thousands of uninterrupted years to develop. And we developed vastly complex cultures, vastly complex symbolisms as well. And it was incorporated into our cultural identity, became part of our traditions. And so you'll see a lot of our symbols in materials, as designs on houses, on monuments, centuries later, still using some of the designs that our ancestors actually created thousands and thousands of years ago. So let's have a look at some of the Adinkra symbols, for example. So we've got the Jainami, and that expresses the omnipotence of God. And this Jainami is an Akan expression that literally means accept God. This just means accept God. And it expresses the omnipotence and the supremacy of God in all affairs. And so if you consider that this symbol is thousands of years old and it's communicating to the population at that time to accept God in all affairs, and that God is omnipotent, is supreme, you can begin to see how far back, the spiritual essence of us as Africans in terms of, our ancestors, how far back it actually goes. So some people say, why can't we get out of this God thing? Oh my gosh, it goes back thousands of years. Most of us are very familiar with the Sankofa bird, and that has been used as a symbol for a lot of the Black history works because, it signifies learning from the past, which is so, so important. Because if we as Africans don't learn from the past, how are we going to go forward? It means we will go forward making the same mistakes again and again and again if we don't learn from the past. So this is a profound Adinkra symbol, originating from the Akan people of Ghana. And its name comes with the Twi expression, Sankofa, which literally means go back and get it. It's a command, that our ancestors would created, and they knew the importance of us being able to connect with our past and have memory of our past. And this was a command, this Sankofa bird, to us to have due regard to the lessons and the practices of the past, because we had to learn from them, because our past informs our present and our present informs our future. And so it's so, so important that we learn that. This is the Duenimen, and this represents strength with humility. And Duenimen means the horns of a ram, and it represents strength in mind, body, and soul. And you can see the horns here, can't you? The horns of the ram that's in here. And just imagine, you could just drop that symbol, and once you know what it means, you know what's being communicated to you. And so if you see this symbol carved somewhere on a monument or something, you know that it's speaking of strength with humility. Yeah, the horns of a ram, that it represents strength, not just physical strength, but strength in mind as well as strength in soul, and humility, wisdom, and learning. Because to our ancestors, learning and lifelong learning was crucial. We were learning every day. And the horns bit of the ram, saying, we know that rams are strong, they're fierce, they can be intimidating, they can be used as defense. So it was a symbol of strength, but with humility. And this sign here is the Adinkrahini, and it's a symbol for authority. It's a symbol for leadership and charisma. And the etymology of the Adinkrahini is Adinkra plus Ohini, which literally means Adinkra king, or king of the Adinkras. And this is so important. I want you to remember this as well. This has a number of meanings, but I want you to remember that meaning as well from the Ashanti region, okay? It means Adinkra king, or king of the Adinkras. And so, all these symbols all have their individual meaning. Yeah, meanings have been attributed to each of these symbols. It's an interesting one here, isn't it? It looks like an Afro-co. It has its meaning as well. And the Adinkra symbols, they actually originate from the Akan people. Those are the people of present-day Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. This is where these symbols actually come from. And their use is commonly dated to quite recently, to the 17th century, but I recognize some of these symbols from my research that actually goes back thousands of years. And so, the philosophical ideas that are encoded in these symbols are much, much older than today's written records suggest. Because remember as well, oral tradition goes back, thousands and thousands of years. All right, so these symbols would have been stamped onto cloth, they would have been worn at funerals, they would have been worn as maybe rites of passage, they would have been worn at sacred ceremonies. These are Adinkra symbols that would have functioned as a visual language. And so, if everyone was mourning, say an Adinkra king, then maybe the material, would be having quite a few of these Adinkra rahims on them as a show of respect for the Adinkra king. And if it had this symbol as well on it with the ram horns, the Duenimen one with the ram's horn, it would be saying that, this Adinkra king was someone of strength, who had strength and humility. So we have to hold on to understanding the meaning of these symbols. And as I said, you would find them on cloths, on walls, on monuments, and they all were preserving and conveying moral values. They were conveying proverbs, spiritual principles, social responsibility, and cosmic order. So they were more than just decoration, as we may see some of them today on materials. They carried and they preserved ancestral wisdom. And these ancestral wisdom, this ancestral wisdom and this ancestral knowledge has been transmitted over centuries, over thousands of years, and it's part of our cultural continuity, and it's embedded. A lot of these the wisdom behind these symbols are embedded in our thought processes, and it helps to communicate to us, gives us ethical guidance. It informs us about our culture, our everyday life, our philosophy, our identity. Lots of everyday life expressions are intertwined in this. And you can find out more about the Adinkra symbols if you go to a website called adinkrasymbols.org. Okay, so it's org or R-A. So go check them out. So another very powerful symbol, African symbol, which was kind of made famous in Europe by the so-called Celts. I say so-called Celts because, anyway, that's another story. But anyway, it's the wearing of these horns, yeah? So the earliest images that we have of people wearing these horns actually goes back to African culture. And in different cultures, the wearing of the horns have different symbolic meaning, but it usually represents power. It represents fertility, protection, or status. And there's various interpretations of this from different cultures, and it can vary significantly. But the horns, normally in terms of status, power, and identify, basically signifies someone's social standing in that particular community. And it could represent their lineage, that they've been handed down that powerful position of dominance, of strength, of status, and it could actually speak of someone's personal attribute. Maybe they have earned the horns through within a particular cultural context. It could be that through wrestling or fighting. It's a show of strength and dominance, and it comes from animals like the bulls or the stags, and those bulls and stags are often regarded as animals that have a lot of strength, fertility, and the ability to fight. So when if you used to see a man or a woman somewhere in Africa wearing these horns, you're looking at someone who has power, you're looking at someone who has strength, who has status, someone's able to fight. And so there are symbolic messages, even in the horns, as you see them there. And like I said, in Europe, the wearing of the horns, that became famous through films and through the media, and was associated with the Vikings. The Vikings were often depicted as wearing the horns. But when you try to do the research into the horn-wearing Vikings, it seems that it was more of a myth of the media rather than evidence. And there's a particular author of some great works. His name is Churchwood, and I'd referenced him in my earlier episodes. And he stated that he reached the conclusion that the so-called Reinheitsgebirge type of the Germans and the Viking type of the Scandinavians, being identical in character with the Mediterranean and Hamitic types, the brown and black African types. So, you know, even if you're looking at a Viking or a Scandinavian, what he concluded from his archaeological research and genetic research and all of the works that he was doing, what he concluded is that if you were looking at the Rhine-Grappa type of German and the Viking type of the Scandinavian, that what you were actually looking at was people who were identical in character with the Mediterranean and the Hamitic types. And these were brown and black people, Africans. Okay, so basically he was saying back then that the Europeans and the culture of the Europeans and those who claimed to be the Vikings were black. And we know that now anyway. So let's look at other horn-wearing traditions that we're very familiar with in Asian history. And here we have the goddess Hathor wearing the horns. And, you know, she's from that very famous triad sculpture, you know, Osar, Oset, and Heru. And here she is wearing her cow horns with the sun disk in the middle, which is full of meaning. And she was one of the gods of Kemet, one of the most powerful gods of Kemet. And she represented love, beauty, music, dancing, fertility, and pleasure. And she was the protector of women. Though men also worshipped her, you know, she had priests as well as priestesses in her temple. So she was a very powerful, very prominent and well-loved goddess who was widely worshipped as a deity of ancient Kemet. And she served as a celestial divinity as well. She was revered as the Lady of the Sky. And there were others that came after her, you know, who continued with the tradition of the cow horn and the sun disk, you know, for in Hathor, as you know, it was also, she was also symbolic of the Egyptian Isis as well. So here she is cradling the sun in between the horns, and this is meant to mimic as well the horizon, the rising and the setting of the sun, and the cementing of her status as a sky goddess. And as you know, there was a whole belief system around the sun, the sky goddess, the heavens, etc. A lot of that has been written into even our Christian ideology today. So, and here we have our artist's impression of a black Viking. Remember, our author told us that the Scandinavians looked almost identical to the black and brown people of the Mediterranean, who were at that time would look something like our brother here. All right, so they say now that the Vikings didn't actually wear all these types of helmets and horns. The reason why they're saying that is because they haven't been able to find any in the Viking age sites that they have been excavating. And for over a century now, they've been doing these excavations all across Scandinavia, and they haven't turned up any Viking age helmets at all. So now they're saying that, you know, the Vikings didn't wear helmet horns, and that they were probably just popularized by movies and pop culture and cartoons and all of that. But we know that horn helmets have been around in Africa and were found in various parts of the world. But they said some horn helmets that have been found in Scandinavia, such as the famous Vex helmet from Denmark, they dated back to the Bronze Age. That was about 1000 BC, way before the Viking Age. All right, so when you're going back 2,000 years ago, you are feet deep in African history and African tradition. All right, and so we're seeing evidence of our Africans ancestors through the culture and through thousands of years of history, wherein the cow horn as a symbol of power and strength and stability. And it's interesting how the cow horn that at one time was worn by a goddess and represented strength, fertility, and wisdom and everything else, and the rising of the sun and the connection to nature, how that's been corrupted by the white world to represent the devil. And these are the images that we'll probably see today when it comes to the wearing of horns. It's been corrupted to symbolize something demonic and something evil, like the devil. And look at where, it was coming from, coming from an African tradition where the wearing of the horns, horns symbolize, power, fertility, protection, something that was spiritual and beautiful.
No, why?
Look at how it has been.
Remember, I'm far away from you. Did your power?
Oh, I can hear you, Dr. Clyde. Jump in. Turn on my speaker. Go ahead, Dr. Clyde. Okay, sorry.
I wasn't saying too much. I was just saying that you're right on the case. Is that how they've taken a lot of our history and they change it so they can make it look as though it's evil or it's demonic or some type of devilish. But horns were a symbol of kingship. That's why they say the men with horns. You read it throughout our ancient history.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Thank you for that, Dr. Clyde. Another example of the corruption of our history and how, what symbolized power and strength, has now been demonized to represent the devil and something demonic. So thank you for that, Dr. Clyde. Yeah, just jump in when you want. All right, so here we have more Adinkra symbols, and I'm going to home in on this Adinkra Rahim symbol that means king of the Adinkra, we learned. And we also learned that this could mean a symbol for authority, leadership, and charisma. And our ancestors carved symbols into mountains and carved them onto tombs. They put them on their crests, they put them on their armors, their textile, their jewelry, because it was visually communicating something to the people, or it was visually communicating something that they wanted the people to remember, something they wanted to put to memory, identity and power. And so this particular concentric circle, it shows up so much in our ancient history. So in terms of the Adinkra symbols, we know what it means there, okay? And it also has other meanings as well. So as we can see here, this Adinkra symbol is also recognized as a concentric circle, which represents time, and time being cyclical, time being part of the cosmic order. And so we're now moving from the Adinkra symbols that we recognize as part of the Akan symbolism, and we're now looking to see where some of these symbols have been showing up. All right, and this is why it's important to recognize our symbols, because it's our history possibly hidden in plain sight. Because if you don't know that these symbols actually come from your ancestors, and that if you see them, that these are messages from our ancestors, be they be on huge monuments, be they be carved into tombstones, be they woven into cloth or, you know, some symbolism elsewhere. If you don't know and don't recognize these symbols, then, you know, you're not going to hear from your ancestors. So here we have a tombstone, okay? And look at the symbols on this tombstone. We can see the concentric circles that we recognize as an Adinkra symbol that talks about that being a king. And we also know on the spiritual side that it represents cosmic order. Here we have the radiating sun and the sun wheel. This was all about the solar knowledge, which is a whole spiritual belief system way prior to Christianity and many of the other religions as we know it today. So this goes back to the solar sun belief system, and, you know, the life force coming from the sun itself and the sun radiating around the planet, and this representing the sun wheel. And then you've got here the cup marks. So you can see the dots on this tombstone that represents cup marks. And these dots represent ancestral stars and our spirit points. And here you have this squiggly line, and you can see the squiggles in here in places. Where here's some squiggles, so you can see these squiggles in places. Now that represents water, and it also represents transformation. Okay, some might look at it and say it represents a snake as well, and that goes back to the belief system that involved the snakes, possibly. And here is another symbol as well, which is the circle with a cross in the middle. Now, this is a really important sign because this is talking about balance and the different stages of life, which we're going to go into a little bit as well. And another important symbol here, these spirals, that talks about change, that talks about transformation. Here we have the spirals, all of these symbols on that tombstone. And where do we find this tombstone, you might wonder? In Ireland. And whose tomb was it on? It was on King Olafola's tomb. And this tombstone is dated over 3,000 years old, over 3,000 years old. And where do you think his tomb is, family? Tell me in the chat. Where do you think this tomb is? Where in the world is his tomb? Okay, let's jump over to the chat and see who we have in the house. Rise up, Sister rise up, Sister Afri-Jamo. Great that you have joined us today. Good to have you in the house. Kwame Ose says the Gainyami accept God, a symbol expressing the omnipotence and supremacy of God, is arguably the most popular and Dinkra symbol in Ghana, reflecting the deep spirituality of its people. There you go, family. Thank you for that, Brother Kwame Ose, who is from Ghana, who speaks Tree and is very knowledgeable of the Akan system. Thank you for that confirmation. And he also says the Almighty Divine, Supreme Being, Supreme Divinity. So all of that message, you know, about the supremacy of God is in that Gainami symbol. Yeah, but you would just look at that and think it's just a picture. If you don't understand the message that's being communicated to us from our ancestors through that Gainami symbol. And he also, Sister Afri-Jamo is agreeing with Brother Kwame. Sister Afri-Jamo rise up from Ghana as well. And Kwame also says the Sankofa bird has two main representations, a bird and a stylized heart. And the current one is the famous Sankofa bird, a mythical bird with its head turned backward, holding an egg in its beak. And while it appears to move forward, This depicts the importance of drawing lessons from the past to guide the present and future. Rise up, Brother Kwame, for that. And so when people say, why is history important? Our ancestors knew history was important, and they encoded the importance of it into symbols and signs and pictures as well, that we today call the Adinkra symbols. And Kwame says that animals have deep symbolic and spiritual importance in the Ashanti Akan culture. Yes, they do. And even in Zimbabwe, when I was there, you know, animals had deep spiritual meanings. They were their totems. Every tribe had an animal as a totem. They call them tribes there. And they had totems. So your totem could be an elephant, or it could be a baboon, or it could be, you know, a giraffe, or whatever your totem was. Your tribe looked after that animal. And this is why Africa was able to preserve so many of its different beautiful species, because the people recognized the spiritual essence of those animals, and they recognized the spiritual importance and the role that they played in the ecosystem and in nature itself. So I still want to know where you think this king is from, okay? And the Adinkra symbols that was all over his tomb that date back over 3,000 years, some say 5,000 years, yeah? 5,000 years old, some think this tomb was. Where do you think this tomb is? Yes, Kwame said the Adinkra symbols is one that looks like a swastika, yeah? Within the Adinkra symbols is one that looks like a swastika, but it has nothing to do with Nazi and predates Nazism. Now you know where they get it from. Nothing's new, you know? And he said, and it predates Nazism by more than, it doesn't say how many years, but we know probably thousands of years. And its symbols are called the Nainkiying, one of the oldest Akan STs, that's saint symbols and philosophical symbols presenting twists of life and the human ability to adapt. There we go. And that's such an important message, because as we go through life, there's going to be ups and downs and twists and turns and, you know, opportunities that have been lost. But, you know, there's a symbol there to remind us that as we go through life, it's going to have its twists and its turns. But as humans, we have the ability to adapt. How important is that? How many of us have heard of and are aware of people suffering mental illnesses right now because they feel that there is no way out of their situation? Imagine if they, as a child, learned, you know, the important messages in these Adinkra symbols, and the one that reminds them that in life there are twists and turns, that as humans we have the ability to adapt and work our way out of every situation. Wow. Rise Up Bay in the house, who says the conventional Vikings were not builders. Where did they get the ships from? They are Africans. Of course they were Africans. And if you watched episode 2 in this series, you will know that there is evidence of African shipbuilders that goes back tens of thousands of years, at least tens of thousands of years, okay? Africans have been building ships for tens of thousands of years. We had knowledge of the star system, the solar system, the cosmos, and we were navigating around the world as Africans. Rise Up, Black people of Israel in the house as well. Sinovia is in the house. Rise up, rise up. Great to have you in the house. Is it Egypt? Not sure. No, it's not Egypt. Yeah, thanks for your guess, but it's not Egypt. We're trying to guess. If you've got my book, there's a whole chapter on this king in my book. I've just given you a clue there. Ton says Mali, West Africa. No, not Mali, West Africa, but thank you for your guess there as well. No, Here we have all these Adinkra looking and other African symbols on this tomb. Where is this tomb? Where is it located? Loaded with African symbolisms and African meanings and philosophies. It's an ancient tomb that's dated between 3,000 to 5,000 years old, belongs to a king named Olafola. I have a chapter of him in my book, Hidden in the Shadows of Ancient Britain, an erased African history restored. Yeah, okay, so that's giving you a big clue. If he's in my book, then you should know that is somewhere in Britain. And this King Olafola, he was a lawmaker. He was a typical Asian African traditional king. And it wasn't unusual for a traditional African king to also be a lawmaker. He was the one who would settle disputes in the community. Brother Kwame Osei, does that still happen to some of the kings stroke chiefs in Ghana? Are they still responsible for settling some local disputes? So as you can see here, we've already gone through some of these concentric circles and the cup dots and the radiating sun wheel and the spiral symbols. Get to know these symbols. They come up a lot in the Neolithic Europe. They come up a lot in the era they call the Neolithic era of Europe. That's over 10,000 years ago as well. And back then, when you saw these spirals, when you saw these symbols, the radiating sun wheel symbols, etc., what it was actually talking about and representing is cosmic order, the sun, the cycles of time, the continuity of life. And there's more to that, and I'm going to come to more about that in a little while. When we saw the squiggles and the swirls as well, they could symbolize the serpent. And yes, do you remember in ancient Kemet, on their crowns, they would have the serpents, wouldn't they, in the middle of their head? You know, and that would symbolize power, that would symbolize divine protection. Yeah, well, this tomb also had some of these wavy lines on it as well. So here we have, you know, these snake type symbols and these concentric circles, you know. So again, it's speaking of power. The serpent symbolized power. It symbolized the ancient belief system as well. The belief of the rising of the sun, the cosmos, the power of the sun. There's a whole serpent belief system as well, which is powerful. And we see that serpent belief system referred to in the Kundalini. That was foundational in Kemet. You've got the Hindu, Tantra and yoga. All of these had serpent power belief systems in there. You know, it's about the power of the serpent laying dormant inside of you, but it could be awakened. You know, that belief system was in Mesopotamia and Greece as well, where snakes were, you know, intimately tied to healing and rebirth in the underworld. And so there's this whole belief system around the snake that cross continents, that our ancient ancestors brought with them. You know, ancient Egypt, the serpent symbolized divine protection, royalty, renewal. We had the cobra that was worn by the pharaohs that represented supreme spiritual authority. So, you know, here on this tomb, there's even more symbols on here that we need to recognize and understand, because the understanding that we're talking about right now is the understanding that our ancestors had of some of these symbols. And maybe by us understanding these symbols and the spiritual side of it that our ancestors had of these symbols, maybe it will help with the awakening that needs to happen, you know, the meditation, the breakthroughs, because once we've awakened, then, you know, the coil, which could be here, this coil begins to unravel and ascend through the spine, and, you know, and it goes up and awakens all our different chakras, you know. So there's all of these symbols that's encoded into these images that we see here. Yeah, and even in the Gnostic mysticism, these were the early esoteric Christian groups. You've got the serpent there, like the serpent of Eden, which back then wasn't a symbol of evil, just like, you know, the horns wasn't a symbol of evil. The serpent wasn't a symbol of evil, but it was a symbol of divinity, of divine, being a divine liberator that granted humanity the knowledge, the esoteric knowledge needed to awaken their own divine potential. And what did they do? Turn the serpent into a snake, and then they put the snake into the Garden of Eden to represent evil. Here they go again, Dr. Clyde, taking what, you know, was to represent the awakening of us as a people and turned it into something evil. So there we go again. So let's move on to the next slide, where we can see that some of these symbols were actually carved onto ornaments and pieces that were found in tombs as well. So as I said, not only did you get these symbols on tombstones, but you would get them on jewelry, you would get them on objects, gold objects, and, you know, some of them sometimes look like inscriptions, but, you know, they were communicating messages. And this sign is so important to me because I've seen this on so many objects that are associated with the British Picts, who, from my research, I learned were a group of British Africans that they've called the Picts. Now, when you give groups of Africans unusual names, then, you know, we're less likely to know when we're reading about them that we're actually reading about ourselves. But the ancient British Picts, so one of the original African nations of Britain, and they have inscriptions on tombstones, you know, from the ancient times, even up to after the turn of the century. And again, if you recognize these symbols, you'll know what to look out for. Let's look again at where they're coming from, okay? These solar discs and what they represent in terms of the cycle of life, etc. Now, we talked about it being, these symbols being of circles, symbols of circles and crosses, etc., being in the Adinkra symbols, then also in the Denga and the Bagongo cosmogram symbols, you've got the cycle, the circle. This is representing the cycle of life, where you've got conception, which is linked to spring, and the rotating of the sun. And from the conception, you go into birth, which is linked to summer. Again, the sun is rotating. So this is the cycle of life. It's rotating from conception to birth to maturity and then death. And you've got the 4 points of earth as well, known as fire, earth, water, and air. So here we have the Dinga, and here we have the Bagongo cosmogram. And again, powerful symbols that were used by Africans in Central Africa to explain how life works. here in this one, very similar to the Dikenga one. The Bagonga cosmogram, you can see here, outside represents the physical world and the spiritual world. So you've got the spiritual world here, the ancestral world, where we become ancestors. And here we've got the physical world. After birth, sunrise, you know, we grow to adulthood, and from adulthood, we die. And then we go into the future, which is the spiritual world, the world of where our ancestors are. So you can see this cycle, and you can see the cross that they've got in here as well. So very similar belief systems in the two parts of Africa, the Pagongo people of Central Africa and the Dikenga people as well, and their various cosmograms. And so these simple circles and crosses, and it teaches us, and it will teach the children as well, that life moves in cycles. Life is not a straight line. It shows the continuous journey of birth, life, death, and rebirth, and the cycle continues. And this is how the physical world of us as living beings is represented in these cosmograms. And it's also showing us the spiritual world, the world of our ancestors. And basically, this is saying to us that we're connected to our ancestors. The physical and the spiritual world is connected, and the visible and the invisible world is connected, and it works in cycles. And we didn't believe that there was an end to life at death. You know, we didn't believe that once we died, that was it. No, you know, as the sun rotates, life rotates. And here we go from the physical into the spiritual world. And basically, after death, we just transform into a different state of being, and we continue in another state. Now, the 4 points that we've got here represents the 4 points of the cross. And this represents the movement of the sun through the day, because the sun will rise, and throughout the day, the sun will set. And then we've got the period where the moon comes, but then the sun comes out again, and the sun will rise and the sun will set. And those are the 4 points of the cross, and where we get our cross from those very ancient cosmological thought processes of our ancestors. So the 4 points represent the movement of the sun through the day, from sunrise to midday to sunset and to midnight. And then we go through the stages again, just as we go through the stages of human life, from birth to adulthood to death, and then to the ancestral world. And this is how the Bakongo people and the Dikenga people philosophically explained the cycle of life. And this cosmogram, I think, expresses it beautifully. And so we can understand life and the cycle of life, and we can understand nature, and we can spring, summer, fall, and winter. We can understand nature, we can understand ancestry, and we can understand the universe itself from this simple circle and the cross that represents the 4 points of the sun and the cycle of the sun as it goes through the day. Wow, wow, wow. The power of symbolism. The power of symbolism, family. Wow, wow, wow. And here we go. So, using the ancient Adinkra symbols here and the philosophy behind the symbols, and using the African cosmograms, we can go through these symbols and then we can begin to decode some of the messages that our ancient ancestors maybe left behind for us on this tombstone here. Let's see if anyone guesses yet where that tombstone is. Dublin, yeah, Kashiba says Dublin. Ah, it's in Ireland. Ireland indeed. Ireland, Agators, yes, Ireland. Rise up, rise up. Yes, yes, rise up, Sister Angie from Agators. She's got my book, so I know you got the answer straight out the book there. High five to you there. And rise up, Kashiba as well for saying Dublin. And Shinovia says Ireland, not sure. Yes, yes. My hypnosis is, this is Bay who says, my hypnosis is all the western frontiers of Europe was inhabited by many people in Western Africa. Yes, it was indeed. Get the book. You will see how our ancestors traveled there as well. And not only were they inhabited by our people from Western Africa, but there were a lot of Africans from Central Africa as well who inhabited Britain. And the evidence is there in terms of, you know, the symbolism, the belief system, the culture, the way they painted their bodies, the designs, it's all there. Yes, Kwame's in the UK. Thank you, Bay. Loving the presentation. Thank you so much. So what we need to now do, now we've looked at some of these Adinkra symbols, and now we've looked at, you know, how some of the ancient meaning that's encoded in these Dinka and Bagongo cosmogram. You know, we then can begin to look at the symbolism on the tombstone and do a bit of comparative mapping, and to begin to read what our ancestors, what the messages were left on those stones by our ancestors 3,000 to 5,000 years ago. And the power in symbolism for us to be able now to share you know, in the knowledge that our ancestors were leaving from us from those ancient times till now, coded right there in plain sight, in the concentric circle, you know, the Adinkarian symbol, meaning king of the Adinkra. Is this tomb with the Adinkarian symbol on it telling us that King Olafola was king of the Adinkra people? And were the Adinkra people actually one of the main groups of people in Britain at that time? Because this sign is what it's saying, is what it's telling us. And, you know, it also is telling us about the belief system of the African Dinga and Bagongo people, about the cycle of life and the meaning of cycles, the continuity of life, the cosmic order that governs the higher principles as well, the radiating sun, the sun wheel, you know, that we see on this tombstone as well. Again, reminding us about the heavens and the stars and the symbol of guardianship. It's reminding the people that they are supported by divine power and that, you know, our ancestors are watching over us. God is watching over them, you know, because we know the God symbol as well. So it's saying that, you know, the Nyami saying, you know, just believe God, you know, the power of God, the power of the solar system, the power of life force itself, the cyclical power of life, the cosmic order, that God is in all of this, and it's in the heavens, it's in the stars, the supreme creative force, the source of life, the cosmic law of life, you know, the cosmic source and law of life itself, the parallel sun wheel, you know. Wow, wow, wow. It's in the Adinkra symbols. It's in the symbols on this tombstone. More symbols on this tombstone as well. The serpentine, the squiggly lines, and what that represents as well. They've got the lines like this in the Adinkra symbols as well, which represents twists and turns in life, you know, that we're all going to have in a journey of life, twists and turns. Life isn't a straight line. And you've got this cosmogram here as well, that's suggesting that we could be between two worlds, you know. And here we've got in the round circle of the cosmogram with the cross in the middle, the quadrant, you know, the different stages of life. It represents balance as well, cosmic order. There's so much written into these symbols, you know. And here we have, again, another spiral. And we see this spiral in the Adinkra symbols as well. And, you know, we know that the cycle and the spiral of life is in the cyclical motion here that goes through from birth to adulthood, to death, and to the ancestral world. As the sun rises and sets, and that cycle happens, so does the cycle from conception to birth, maturity, and death, and then our transition into the spiritual world. So this is cluttered with meaning and messages. It's a whole written language, written in stone, and that tells us of the vast knowledge system, the knowledge that our ancestors had of the cosmos, of nature, of life, the cycle of life, of God, you know. So when we compare this stone to the African symbolism, you know, like the Adinkra symbol and the Congo cosmogram, we can see the same intellectual structure, the same cycle of life and cycle of time, and the star movement, the ancestral presence, the knowledge that is on this stone. If you didn't know all of this and you just looked at the stone, you think, oh, those are some pretty designs on those stones. But look what it represents in terms of the cosmological worldview, the ancestral worldview, you know, in terms of who he was as a king, you know, and now being an ancestor, you know, looking over and protecting his people, you know, in the unseen world. Wow, wow, wow. This is powerful, powerful stuff, family. But again, if we don't recognize the importance of the Degenge Congo cosmograms and, you know, the symbolisms on this tombstone, then we would be missing out so much knowledge that our ancestors had actually encoded for us into these circles and crosses and symbols that we see. And we can see from the basic circles and the crosses how they become spirals and cycles, and, you know, and when our, you know, Sankofa bird tells us to look back, look at what we can find if we look back. Even the dots here pointing to, you know, the ancestral stars, the spirit points, you know, and the cross symbol as well, representing balance and direction and life stages. There's so much, you know, history and knowledge that's written into this stone. And if we don't look at it through the lenses of a nation African, then we're going to miss so much, because this basically represents an African world view, the view of our ancestors, of the cycle of life, the cycle of time, ancestral presence, guidance, protection, the solar system, the unseen world, the seeing world, the ancestral world, the cycle. Oh my gosh, family, this is phenomenal. Phenomenal, the messages that our ancestors was leaving to us on this tombstone. Yeah. Which is actually Newgrange in Ireland. This is the Newgrange, a Newgrange tombstone in Ireland, and I've got a full picture of it somewhere, and I will come to that as well. There's a few more Adinkra symbols that have such powerful meanings. They all have powerful meanings. This is a Sisawu Suban one that translates to change or transform your character. So someone drops this on you, they're saying to you, come on fam, change your character, fix up yourself, transform your life, you know. It could be sending a personal message, or, you know, it could be just sending a message to you in the rising, you know, here's another opportunity to transform, you know, to make good, to make something of yourself. You know, this is about lifelong learning and the need for us to be positively and constructively moving and changing and growing. Same as every morning, the morning star, you know, symbol in there represents the rising of the sun. And here the wheel around the rising of the sun representing the rotation of the sun and the cycle. You know, it's saying we have an opportunity to change our character. We have an opportunity to change ourselves, to reflect ourselves, you know, much better than we did the day before. Wow. And the inner star here representing a new day, a new start, and the outer wheel, you know, the transformation, the motion. Wow, 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 family. Again, symbols that are just packed in meaning. And these, if we home in on, so let me go back to that one, you'll recognize here some of the megalithic stone structures in Sudan. There won't be much left of our ancient history of Sudan. These wicked, evil people are now using drones to bomb the civilians in Sudan. They are bombing the ancient structures. They are committing a genocide. They are ethnically cleansing the region, just as they did, you know, using other means in Kemet, in Tunisia, in Morocco, in Syria, you know, in Iran, in Afghanistan, just as they ethnically cleansed the Africans from those regions, from the Mediterranean and from Europe. They are moving now into Africa and cleansing Africa of the ancient Sudanese people who are the ones behind these megalithic monuments that we see now that even predate Egypt. Dr. Clyde, did you want to jump in? Did I hear you then?
Oh, I was just listening because, as you said, is that this is Africa. This is Africa. It's just to tell you that so much of our understanding of our history has been lost, and it's been lost because of the fact, in a sense, that people don't know how to look at the symbolism. Look at that. Look at the various houses, the various pyramids in those first two pictures. The one at the top in the middle, and the one on the left-hand side. Those are from the Sudan.
Yes.
Sudani, you see?
Yes.
Sudani, and this is a part of showing the importance of these figures and how the traditions were not lost. The traditions are carried on. The only problem we have is that much of our history in Africa was maintained in the secret societies. And when you belong to a secret society, you couldn't tell.
Yes.
But what happened is that as the white man came over and started talking about he had writing systems and he had books and knowledge, then some people said, we had to kind of show them that we have ancient knowledge too. We have ancient symbolisms. We have ancient writing, you see? You know? And so then what when the white man look at these signs and he just see slashes, dots, and circles, he he thinks he's just looking at some type of scribbling.
Yes.
No, that's deep. That's deep. But the point is this: is that so much has been destroyed, so much has been sent into an upheaval, and what makes it even worse is that now so much of the Egyptian records are in these libraries. They're being in a sense guarded by white folks. As a result, we're not going to ever really know the real history of ancient Egypt, the Sudan, West Africa. We're not going to know none of that shit. Excuse me, because of the fact, in the sense that the European has it all locked up. The
Yep.
European has it safely put away, so that he can, in a sense, let us know what he wants us to know and hold back those things that are so important. I mean, look at those images.
Yeah.
Those images, that's from the Sudan.
Yeah.
That's not ancient Egypt. That's the Sudan. But it's
Yes.
just to show you how much of our history, how much of the complexity, the intricacies, the knowledge that we took from Egypt and spread throughout the world, you
Yes.
see,
Yeah.
is right in front of us. But we'll
Right.
never know that because the European wants to separate us. The
Yeah.
European says there's the East Africans, the West Africans. And then there's those dumb people in the Caribbean and in the United States. They don't know what they're talking about. We do. We do know what we're talking about. And that's why we need more researchers and we need more knowledge. I mean, look at what we've been able to discover without the money that the white man has.
Yeah.
The white man has millions and millions of dollars
Yeah.
backing him up to do research.
Mhm.
All we got is a little money that we can save from our jobs or our wives and husbands and lovers and partners share with us to decipher this ancient knowledge, to spread it to the world. But look at these monuments. This is our history.
Wow.
Our
And it's
history.
still standing after thousands of years.
That's right.
Thousands of years. We've got buildings in London, in the UK, that were put up in the 1960s and 1970s that we've had to take down, otherwise they were falling down. And some that have been made so badly, they're a fire risk and all the rest of it. But look at these pyramid structures. I mean, Sudan has over 200 pyramids that just rise out the desert there, over 200 pyramids. And these people who have claimed North Africa and Egypt as their own, they now want to claim Sudan for its rich history, and all of, obviously, the minerals that it has, So thank you for that interjection there, Dr. Clyde. Thank you.
You're welcome always. You're always welcome.
Thank you. So let's look more closely then, shall we, at these statues in Sudan. And you can see, look, the swirls. Look at all these, swirls that are all over this particular monument here. And of course, these circular designs here, we've already been learning, have meaning. The cycle of life, the longevity of life, and thousands of years later, we're still looking at these cycles here and the symbolism and what it could possibly mean. And I want you to tell me in the chat, what do you think, these circles on this Sphinx here actually mean, on these monuments? What do they mean? They have meaning. Everything that our ancestors did had meaning. And let's look somewhere else where we can find, a very similar swirls. This is in Malta. Now, there are a number of temple sites in Malta that they have excavated, Malta in the Mediterranean region. Because remember, North Africa stretched from North Africa across the Red Sea into the Mediterranean region, and all the little islands there were basically like stop-off points. They were like bus stops on our voyages, on our journeys around, the Mediterranean region. And wherever we went, we took our culture with us. In everywhere we stopped on these islands, that it may be that it had its own African king and its own group of its own population, and they brought the belief system with it. That here on these tombs in Malta, once you know what you're looking at, again, this is African symbolism all over the entrance of the tomb. And these are ancient tombs that they have been excavating. And this is where the excavation is happening. So you can look up the Jantija Archaeological Park. They've got Neolithic temples there that they found. They've got the Haggard temples. That's another archaeological site where they've got megalithic ruins, evidence again that our ancestors visited there. And they're calling it Malta's experience, like Dr. Clyde said. The way that they have divided up the world, it gives the impression that there were different groups of people, and they don't go back to the root. But basically, the root is in Africa, and this is another branch of our ancestors that's established themselves in this region. And this is a king's. These are kings' tombs that are buried in these sites. And they would have found lots of archaeological objects, jewelry, skeleton remains, and everything else in these sites as well. And even today, in African art and in African, on the houses and in materials, we can see the symbolism of our Asian African ancestors who were speaking to us, thousands of years ago, still speaking to us today through African art, through African architecture, through the buildings with the geometrical shapes on it. You've got the zigzag, you've got the triangle, you've got the swirls, you've got the diamond shape. You've got it in fabric, you've got it on the monuments, you've got it on housing designs. And, if you don't know the history of some of these symbols, you wouldn't even know that they belong to us as Africans. So we're talking about symbols that were created thousands of years before there was even a single European to speak of on the planet. If they were around, they were still in the Caucasus Mountains. But here we are, and here we have, examples of ancient African symbols that go back thousands of years. And the shapes we recognize today, the chevron shapes, the zigzag, the swirls, the diamonds, all shapes that we recognize today. The swirl of the snake, synonymous with the Picts, these concentric circles. We have to recognize these shapes and these symbols as belonging to us, as our creations, that symbols that were created out of the minds of our ancestors and what they represented as well. Wow. They became part of our community, part of our custom, part of our art. When we would swirl and design, these had meanings. These symbols had meanings, and these meanings were there to govern our behavior. They were there to remind us of our traditions, remind us of our customs. They were there for us to observe, so that it would help us in the way that we went about life and how we saw life, how we communicated with each other, our customs and our practices. It was the community of blood, the shared genetic heritage that we had as a family that went back centuries. So basically, we can see this shared ancestry that goes back thousands of years on the tombs of ancestors, on the tombs of great ones, on the great pyramids in Sudan, you know, on the tombs of ancestors from Malta in the Mediterranean to Ireland. You know, let me show you some more ancient and modern. Now, I went to an event in the Gambia about 2 years ago, and I had to take a picture of the men who had painted their faces. And look at the design that he's got painted on his face, a symbol that goes back thousands of years. Here it was today, you might as well say, in this cultural event a couple of years ago, in 2023, in the Gambia. And these are Mandinka people. Here's your Mandinka people, the Manding people. And here in the middle is from a tombstone in Ireland, and it's called a Pictish stone. And here we have the symbols, again, the snake, the swirl, the dots, you know, the dots that represent the stars and the celestial stars. And here we have the circles again. Look at the African symbolism all over this ancient tombstone that's that we're looking at here. And look at it here on the faces of these Mandinka people who are dressed in their, you know, they're in a traditional cultural garment for, you know, historical remembrance and for entertainment. And look at all of the shell beads as well that they're wearing, very significant in ancient African history. These shells have been found in tombs that have been dated over 80,000 years old. Over 80,000 years ago, our ancestors were stringing shells together to make all sorts of costume jewelry. And here we have the Mandinka people still using this traditional design. And as you know, he's holding a calabaska pot in his hand there. And our ancestors would make these very similar design pots out of dirt and pottery and clay and fire them. And we found many of these types of pots in the tombs of our ancestors as well. So here we have the Mandinka people preserving their history through the cultural performances. You know, they're preserving their ancient tradition of body painting as well. Exactly what the Picts did. They were very much into body painting. The Picts people of Scotland, the Picts of Ireland, and the Picts of Wales, very much into body painting as well. And here we have, you know, the shells, the body painting, the symbolism that goes back thousands of years, still as part of the Asian tradition in Scotland. Wow, 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 family. Our history jumping at us. Okay, let's go to that tombstone in Newgrange in Ireland now. And now, if I took you to Newgrange in Ireland and you were to look at the stone, look at the messages that would jump out at you. Here we can see from Sudan to Malta, to Ireland in Britain, messages left behind by our ancestors. The cut marks. Have a look at that, family. Just take a look for a moment while I have a sip of water. Wow, here we have the spirals that represent change, that represent transformation, the circles that represent the Adinkra symbol of king, of the supreme being, of God. Here we have the dots that represent the ancestral stars and the spirit points. And we have the repeated diamond patterns as well. The geometric shapes, it's all here, you know, symbolism, a language that our ancestors created that had such deep meaning. Excuse me, had such a deep meaning. And I've attempted to explain some of the meaning, but they mean so, so much more. And so here we have on the tombstone in Newgrange in Ireland, African symbolism all over it. And once we start understanding, understanding that symbolism, we can begin to understand the message that our ancestors carved into stone for us and left behind for us. They were telling us that they understood the cosmic order of things, the cycle of life, you know, the star system, the sun, how it radiates, the patterns and the cycle of nature itself, the balance of the world in terms of cosmic harmony, the cyclical nature that governs our universe. And many of our ancient cultures use these patterns to reflect their understanding of the universe itself, and as above, so beneath. As we had the supreme ones above in the ancestral world, we had the supreme ones on earth who are leading the people. African symbolism is everywhere once you know what you're looking for. Once you recognize the symbols, once you recognize the markings, then it doesn't matter where in the world it is, you know, you will be able to look and recognize the markings of your ancestors. It could be in caves, it could be on tombstones, it could be on any one of the continents. These were not random symbols that our ancestors were leaving for us. These were messages that they carved into stone, and they carved it into stone so that, you know, it would last for eternity. And so, you know, our ancestors were absolutely, absolutely amazing. So this one here, this is in Ireland. This is the Newgrange site in Ireland. It's a Neolithic passage tomb that dates back, well over 5,000 years ago. Okay, and as we know, it's the grave and the tomb of King Olafodla. And there's a whole book that I found that was written on him as well. This one here is from Scotland, from Kilmartin, Glen Argyll in Scotland. And you can see we've got some carvings here. It's talking about cosmological order and sacred spaces here. And we've got the sun wheel here. We've got the star dot in here as well. And lots of symbolism. If we was to zoom in, we'd see more symbols here on this tombstone. We've also got here in the Iberian Peninsula, in Spain and Portugal, this is Galicia. We've got this megalithic tradition here, which is, again goes back to cosmic memory and our ancestors explaining how they saw the cosmos in relation to us here on Earth. And here in the sub-Saharan region as well, at Napta Playa, we've got some early rock art here that's displaying cosmology, geometry, and again, talking about the cycle of life. And here on these Pix memorial stones in Scotland, again, you will see that they are fused together with our ancient spiritual belief system and they were eventually conquered by the Christian religion and the Christian faith. And you can see here where they've gone from their ancient belief system that they took with them, a bit like today, where some of our African brothers, although they practice the Muslim religion, they also practice their traditional African spirituality. So here you had the African Picts who practiced their ancient African traditional belief system, also practicing Christianity. And you can see the Christian cross in there. You can see the sun wheel here. So you can see the circle that represents the cycle of life and the 4 points of the sun from the sunrise, the sunset here, and the belief in the importance of nature and the beliefs. So you can see all in here on all these different tombstones across Scotland, and you'll also find them across Ireland as well. So this is the point at which the African Picts were being converted to Christianity. But you can see they didn't totally abandon their traditional belief system that had been handed down to them for thousands of years. You know, what they did is they blended it together. And there are many of these Pictish memorial stones all over Scotland. But unless you know that these are stones that represent African tombs and the African ancient spiritual belief system with modern Christianity, and that you're looking at, you know, the works of your ancestors, you know that. Okay, there's so much more I could say about this, but hopefully it's going to be in my next book when I'm homing in on Scotland and Ireland. So family, just to wrap up here, we've been looking, even here in this picture, at over 5,000 years through the lens of African symbolism. And from Newgrange in Ireland to Pictish tombstones in Scotland, to Benin and the Gambia, you can see the African symbolism and the African and the messages that have come down through the centuries to us today. And it's our job now to understand these symbols and what they all mean, because it's everywhere. Our ancestors left us messages everywhere. And so I hope today, I've added to the presentation that Dr. Clyde did last week, where we were talking about the fact that, you know, it's one of the greatest misconceptions that our pre-colonial civilizations didn't have its own sophisticated communication system, because not only did we have, you know, thousands of languages that we spoke, but we also had a very sophisticated communication system that stretched from Africa all the way into Europe, and that our ancestors had already developed a very highly advanced system of communication long before any, you know, modern writing system have even emerged. We were communicating powerful messages, you know, through symbols, powerful messages through symbols. It was a language of its own. These symbols were a language in their own right. We were communicating philosophy, we were communicating spirituality, principles, ways of life, how to conduct yourself, social values, status. We were communicating strength, the importance of life through the hieroglyphs in Kemet. Again, the symbols, those images carried layers of meanings and messages. So we're very complex people. When you see a symbol, which could be a swirl, the meaning that it has, you know, in terms of the spiritual realm, in nature itself, the cosmos, the physical world, layer upon layer of meaning. And so as we examine the Adinkra symbols, as we looked at the wisdom that was encoded in them, as we consider the Dinka and the sacred Congo cosmogram and how they mapped life and how they understood, you know, the journey of life through symbols, as we looked at the symbols and the pyramids from Nubia and Sudan and the patterns of those symbols that were far beyond Africa. We can see how the Mandinka people, how they preserve ancient symbols. Yes, Dr. Clyde, come in.
Oh no, I thought you wanted to talk about something.
Yes, yes, indeed. Let me just wrap up there by saying that our ancestors were far from.
Well, let me know what time you're going to be up there if you want me to pick you up.
Let me stop sharing now. Come in, please.
Okay, bye.
Come in, please, Dr. Clyde.
Oh.
Yes. Welcome back. I'm just minimizing my presentation in the background there. Yes, Dr. Clyde, turn on your camera. You are with us. Yes, Dr. Clyde. Our ancestors are from primitive.
Again.
Oops, you've gone on mute. You're on mute. Unmute yourself.
Okay, again, family, what Shanice is doing is telling you about our history. You know, she's telling you about history that's right in front of our eyes, but it's hidden at the same time. And it's hidden because the fact is that they try to divide it into this group or that group, or this Irish people, or the Piddish. When they're talking about nothing but Black people, they're talking about you, family. They're talking about us.
Yeah, for real, you know, and I hope that everyone now goes away and realizes that we had more than the modern writing system that we had today. You know, our ancient ancestors, oh my gosh, they had very complex, oh, don't go anywhere, Dr. Clyde. I've taken the presentation off now. Very complex, you know, symbols as well. So is it my computer, but you're looking a little hazy there. Looking a little hazy. Maybe give the camera a little wipe. Maybe the camera needs a wipe. You know what? I'm just so glad that I was able to get through the presentation today. As you know, we tried earlier unsuccessfully, and I had to log off, and then we come back on again an hour later. And this time there seems to be less traffic. While we were able to get, yes, there you go. Then there was light, and we invented light. Yes, Dr. Clyde, I'm seeing you well. Go ahead now, share your thoughts and your comments about the presentation today and our African ancestors, ancient writing.
Again, a great presentation. And you know, this family, this is only touching the surface. This isn't even going deep into it. And what there's so many monuments. There's so many monuments spread throughout Ireland that relate to our ancestors, that relate to your ancestors. See, what people don't understand is that when they emptied Ireland of the Irish, those were you. That was your ancestors. Those weren't white Irish. Those were Black people.
That's right.
Those were Black people.
Yeah, and let's show them our book, Dr. Clyde, that we're going to be reading.
That's right.
For us. So we're on episode 20 now. So this brings to an end our journey that we have been going through across the different continents, proving, you know, that our ancestors were the original people of all the continents. And I haven't really gone into Europe and in Britain as much on this series as maybe some may have wanted me to. But if you get the book, it will lay the foundation and it'll make it clear to you the extent to which we have a history in Britain. Okay, so family in the chat, Dr. Clyde and I was thinking, shall we do a series now where we take it from this book that was recommended to me by one of my viewers. Thank you so much again. The title is To Hell or Barbados, the Ethnic cleansing of Ireland. We can do a reading and have a conversation of that. It's one of these books that has researched what happened in Ireland during the 17th century when it was emptied of the Irish. He's searching for the Irish that were emptied out of Ireland.
That's right.
And he's looking for white people, and he can't find them. Why can't he find them, Dr. Clyde?
Because they weren't white, but that's what he thought. And he went to the islands. He went to all these islands, and he found all these black people with Irish names, and he just said, where's the white folks? But he still couldn't come out and say that there were black people in Europe, that those Irish were black, many of them were black. And see, this is a big problem we have, is that as late, and this is what makes it so crazy, family, as late as 1756, the Germans were dark, very dark skin. And just look at how so many formerly black people have become white. But again, all it takes is to keep marrying light-skinned people, and eventually you can kind of drain it out. But the thing is that this history is about us. Go ahead,
Argentina. I think everybody knows now that Argentina was once black. The Argentinians, the original Argentinians were black, the original Palestinians, the original Iranians, the original Afghanistanians, the original Israelites. We were the original people of the entire world. And this series actually proves it. If you've missed any of the series, any of the episodes in this series, please do go back and watch them. Let's get some comments from the chat, because today is episode 20. So I'm drawing a line under this series now, Hidden in Plain Sight, and we're going to start a new series. And I was wondering, should I take a break for a few months and put together a new series? Or should we do the book reading and have a really interesting conversation about the book as we read, and Dr. Clyde got the book as well, and I think we're going to read. What would you suggest I do, family in the chat? Take some time out? Are you fed up? Have you had enough of our history now? Do you want a break and I go away and work on a new series that focuses on Britain and Europe? Or should we continue and home in on what happened in Ireland? Because what happened in Ireland also speaks to what happened in Scotland, Wales, and England as well. So let me know your thoughts. Let me see what we got in the chat so far. Bay said, did white people live simultaneously with black people in Germany? What is your thoughts of the white Germanic Vandals? Well, if you go back to the beginning of the series, Bay, we started our journey over 100,000 years ago. When you talk about the Germanic Vandals, you're talking about people who've only been around for a few hundred years. A few hundred years. So you have to look at our history in terms of our timeline. What the Europeans have successfully managed to do is collapse time when it comes to our history. And you'd think that our history of yesteryear was just a few years ago or a few centuries ago. No, as a people, we go back possibly 1 million years. 200,000 years ago, we started migrating out of Africa and we started populating the globe. And so we have been on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years before there was even a single white person from out of the Caucasus Mountains. Now, we know they came out of the Caucasus Mountains. That much we know. And there's a number of theories about how they got in there, but we're not going to go into all those different theories. That they are separate presentations on a separate series to talk about, the white people. And that's why they're digging up all of our ancient graves, because they're trying to find themselves. But every time they find these ancient skeletons and then they do the DNA, they come up, Dr. Clyde?
With you. They come up with you and I.
They come up looking like us, very melanated, blackety black, black, black. They can't find themselves in ancient history at all. They don't. And as Dr. Clyde said, up to 1700 and something, when Franklin, what was his name? Franklin, somebody.
Benjamin Franklin.
Benjamin Franklin did his observation of the world. Remind us of what Benjamin Franklin, who he was and what he said, please, Dr. Clyde. You can probably recall in more detail than I verbatim what Benjamin Franklin actually said. And who was Benjamin Franklin? Remind us, please.
Benjamin Franklin, he was an inventor, an American inventor. He was a writer. He was a loyalist during the so-called Revolutionary War, and so then he's one of the so-called early geniuses of the Americas. But at the same time, he recognized, he wrote about the fact is that just about everybody was black, even the Germans. So that could tell you what was going on and how quickly. Remember, what does it take, about 3 different generations to really change? It doesn't take that long.
Yeah. And one of the things that he observed and he said, and I think, he was saying, it was at a time, he was speaking at a time when the British were emptying Britain of the blacks, and they were sending the blacks who were in Britain to the so-called New World. They were sending the blacks to the Caribbean, they were sending the blacks to the Americas, they were sending us blacks to mainly the Americas and the Caribbean. And he was like, hold on a minute, Germany is black. Britain is black. Most of Europe is black. We have the opportunity here to make America white, he was saying. And so he was saying at the time, don't send so many blacks, basically, to here in America. We have the opportunity to make America white. So he was one of these very early, racist, segregationists.
White supremacists.
There's nothing supreme about them. But I hear that. They like to think they're supreme, but history shows us that they are far from it. So, and in that speech of his, because it's a speech and you can go and read his speech, it makes you realize that up until the 1700s, most of Europe and the world was still black. So what happened to us from the 1700s, the 1800s and 1900s? Mass genocide, mass slaughtering. And then with those of us that were left, the whitewashing. Wow.
And not only that, a lot of, they brought in a lot of those prostitutes. They brought in a lot of prostitutes from Bosnia. Because remember, the European slave trade, that was just mainly Bosnian women. That was mainly women being sold to the to Africa and Asia. White women just being sold to Africa and Asia.
And the royals who were ruling Europe were connected by blood, by family, a lot of them, through the generations. And in that time, we know them as the Moors, don't we? So you had the African Moors who were ruling all over Europe, the Americas, and they were connected to the ancient Egyptian pharaoh bloodline as well. And they had a fetish, didn't they, for the white European, slave women.
And I think another thing, family, is that
cleaned them up and did more than they should have been doing with them.
Yeah. Another thing that you had to remember is that these Moors were not all Muslims.
No, they weren't.
Many of them were Christians. Many of these Moors were Christians. And this is something that people may not really understand, because that's what makes Christianity last so long. But the British, they can go back a long ways in terms of that whole idea of Africans coming over to Britain and making Britain what it is today. But again, that's why you got to get hidden in the shadows. Come on now.
Get the
Order
Asian
that book right now. Order it. You got to get the book.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Clyde. So let's quickly visit the chat before we wrap up. For those of you who are wondering, how comes you're on so late today? That's because we started an hour later. We had to abandon our first effort to go live because the internet was just so unstable. And then we said, let's try again. And I'm so glad that we did. So he said, don't mean to prolong, but hypothesis is what people have been attacking African civilization for at least 2,000 years, unless you're saying it's all recent. The hypothesis is that people have been attacking African civilization for at least 2,000 years. Oh, yes, I've got you there. Yeah. Yes. Oh, yes. That certainly has been the case. We have been under attack for the last 2,000 years, but it intensified during the 1700s, 1600s, 1700s is when it seriously intensified. Yes, indeed. Oh, electricity, Ben Franklin, Kev says. Blacksy Black, yeah, that's them, keep turning us up. Yes, Sister Kev, so glad that you're back with us as well. Says, my Jamaican friend has Irish relatives at her family reunion. There you go. I mean, even if you go to Jamaica and some of these places, they've got the names of Irish towns. The people have got Irish surnames, Scottish surnames. And we think that we were given all of these surnames by the so-called, enslaver. Well, no, that's not the case. Many of us left Ireland and Scotland with our Irish and Scottish names. And if you look at the family crest of your Scottish or Irish name, don't be surprised if it doesn't have a black head on it, like my family crest actually does. Sister Shanice, please post your Zoom link and password for Saturday radio show. Oh, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I think I'm on this Saturday and you can join me live. I'll post it in I'll do it as a post on YouTube. Okay, Karen, thank you so much for that. I'll do it as a post on YouTube. Go to the YouTube post by tomorrow if you want to join me live for my radio show on Saturday. And Kashiba said, let's read the book. It is on Amazon. Yes, it is indeed. Thank you so much. Would much appreciate love if you were to buy one of my books or one of Dr. Clyde's books as a gift for a loved one, because the gift of knowledge is the gift of power. And to empower a loved one is the best thing that you can do for that loved one. Thank you so, so much. Kev says, bravo. Tone says, great presentation. Thank you so much, Tons. Kashiba, the Africans, have created the spiral of nature. The Euros have called it the Fibonacci spiral. Yeah, they just take our history and give a new name to everything, don't they? Yes, indeed. Ton says the spirals and a dinchromene and the cross within a circle are on a lot of metal and wood tablets found in the Indian mounds in Florida. Thank you so much for sharing this information. Dr. Clyde, you're going to have to get to those Indian mounds all over Florida. Yeah.
I got presentation on that. If you want to do that, we can do that one day. Just
yeah. Give them the name of your YouTube channel so they can subscribe and know when you start coming back.
It's just ancient African history. YouTube, Clyde Winter's ancient African history site.
Yeah, you've got another name for it as well. Dr. Clyde Winter's yeah, okay, but make sure you click on his one because his name comes up a lot. When you put in Dr. Clyde Winters in YouTube, it comes up on a lot of channels where he's done presentations, but join his channel. And let me see, what's the name of your channel, Dr. Clyde Winters?
It's ancient history. Ancient history.
Ancient history. Okay, I think you got more. Yeah, it's another name for it as well. Thank you, Cass, for your $2 donation. Much appreciated. Thank you so, so much. Is this the birth of the Fibonica spiral? I don't know. I haven't looked into that. Dr. Clyde, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Fibonacci. Fibonica spiral. You know, everything that they have today is birthed out of the works of our ancient ancestors. So without even looking into it, I bet if I was to look into it, I would find a link. Kwame says, it is the web of Anansi, the crafty spider, who is preeminent in African folklore and Jamaican folklore too. He says, look at Spider-Man. You know, this is theft of Ashanti Akan culture, as the spider has deep meaning for a spider's web, a symbol of wisdom, craftiness, creativity, and the complexities of life. Yes, then teeth everything. And the spiral says Kashiba is related to mathematics. Look up the Fibonacci spiral. I will do. Thank you so much for that. Thanks for making the links. I hope we've inspired you to do your own research. And, you know, as Dr. Clyde said, I was just scratching the surface. We were just scratching the surface. There are so many African symbols, each with their own deep meaning from different parts of Africa. Let me allow Dr. Clyde to leave us with some closing remarks.
Okay, family, the most important thing to remember is this, is that it's not up to you to wait to find out about your history. Your history is in front of your face. What you have to do is support it. Have your, you know, if you have children or family members, let them know about this history too. You know, a lot of times our family members take for granted our greatness, but they don't understand is that you have to teach greatness so that our children, the future, will know that they can be great too. Very important.
Yes, very important indeed. You have to teach the greatness of our ancestral works to your children so that they will be empowered. They use these symbols and signs and shapes every day in school, and they're not even taught the history of where some of these shapes come from. And if they knew the history, maybe it would begin to jog some ancestral memory of who they are and where they're coming from. Some of these young ones, they could be our ancestors reincarnated, coming back again. But we have to be able to jog the ancestral memory.
That's right. We have to do that, and the only way it can be done is just to get the kids out there. But again, you had to open up children, you had to open up young people and get them in a sense to find their place. You know, there's certain things that touch you. I remember when I first became interested in history, I was 10 years old, but I saw this video about the explorers, and I wanted to be an explorer. You know, it's probably something that made you want to know more about Black history and made you maybe want to be in social work or whatever. But the thing is, this is that there's these moments. But see, the more kids are exposed to, the greater their opportunity to maybe find something where they fit in.
Yeah.
They fit in, you know, because remember, a lot of us had different roles if we are reincarnated, and I believe in reincarnation. But some of us had different roles, but sometimes we just need that information to draw on.
You were an Olmec in your previous life.
I was a big head.
Yeah, big head man. Oh, wonderful. Family, thank you so, so much for joining us. Thank you for your patience with the, technical hiccups that we had in the earlier parts of the show today. I'm so glad we decided to try again, Dr. Clyde. Dr. Clyde, thank you so much. So I think we've kind of said we're going to start reading. Give books about Black history. Okay, teach and pass on our Black history. So yeah, when we come back next week, we'll be able to recommend some books. Of course, you got the books that Dr. Clyde have written and the books that I have written as well. We'll remind you of those books when we come back next week. And we'll also remind you of books of other great authors that you can get and give as a gift of knowledge to loved ones. So we're going to start reading our book next week, To Hell or Barbados, The Ethnic Cleansing of Ireland. You're going to be shocked, some of you, to learn of this history. Yeah, we're ready, we're ready. Take care, family. Take care, Dr. Clyde. Stay strong and
Take care. Have a
powerful.
good evening now.
And we see you next strong, all being well. Bye
Yeah,
for now. Take care.
Don't forget to let me know what our chapter we're going to talk about.
Okay, we're going to start from the beginning and work
Okay.
our way through. All righty.
right.
So those of you who want to join me on my radio show on Saturday, go to the post on my YouTube channel and I'll put the link there. Thank you so, so much. More strength, more love, more power to each and every one of you. Stay grounded, family. One love.